Shalom, Bethel family. It is Thursday. The days of awe, the Yamim Noraim, are behind us, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and I wish you a Moadim L'Simcha. It is the period of Sukkot between the first Yontif and the second Yontif, known as Chol HaMoed, a time of happiness, of eating in the sukkah, and experiencing great joy. Last week in Shul on Saturday, it was Parshat Haazinu. We were about to start Sukkot, and I was reading through the Parsha as I study every year as they roll around, and Haazinu is really a poem that Moses is giving to the people to help them remember the Torah. Now, it doesn't specifically, when I read it anyway, remind me of every piece of the Torah going through. But it does remind us of the great principle that the Jewish people are a poetic people, that we pray symbolically because we have a God. Our God, the God, is a God that you cannot know anything about. By definition, God is unique. There are no comparisons to be made. So the prayer book, and in fact, even the Torah, is poetry. It's metaphor. It's simile. When we refer to God as our Father, our King, we know that God is neither our Father or our King. But poetry has this way. It tells us there are attributes of God that are like a father, that are like a king. So Haazinu really is Moshe's way of giving us that tool of poetry for relating to God. I was particularly, as I studied through it, drawn to the second verse in the Parsha. Remember, it's poetry. So the first verse is, "Give ear, ye heavens, Haazinu hashamayim, and I will speak, v'adabera, v'tishma ha'aretz imrefi, and let the earth hear the words of my mouth." And then this very interesting line, "Ya'arof kamatar lichi tizal katal imrati, Kiseirim ele desha vichrivivim ale esev." My doctrine shall drop as the rain, my speech shall distill as the dew, and the small rain upon the tender grass, and as the showers upon the herb. Right? God, or Moses giving this poem from God to the people, compares Torah to water, to rain. It's interesting, I think, because that is a symbolism that we will use for Torah going forward. And there's lots of commentaries about this. One I particularly like is from Ta'anit, debate between sages of old, where they talk comparing rain to the day of resurrection. Right, it's the day of resurrection, the end of days, when people come back to life. They're saying how rain is greater, at least as good as that, because rain brings new life. Right? In fact, they say, I just find this interesting, Rav Yosef says, the act of rain is just as important as the day of resurrection. It is therefore inserted in the benediction for resurrection, the second paragraph of the Amidah. Those of you who pray regularly or have some background in Jewish prayer know that during the rainy season, we insert just before the second prayer of the Amidah a prayer for rain. Why there? Right, that paragraph that it introduces is actually about Mechayeh HaMetim, the resurrection of the dead. It's about God's strength, Gevurah, but we know God is strong. God is even stronger than death. And so here the rabbis placed the prayer for rain, because rain is water, is life, it's renewal. But I was thinking about water as I read. This verse caught my eye for two reasons. One, the holiday of Sukkot is actually a holiday about rain. It is when we start adding that benediction to the Amidah, because it is when the rainy season begins in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel. And so we're told that we're judged for rain on Sukkot, right? That we continue to be judged, and rain is symbolically this connection between God. That Torah, just like rain, brings new life and renewal. And that's why Moses compares Torah to rain or to water. But I was also thinking of rain, of course, because of Hurricane Florence, which did not come through here, but had devastating impacts further south in North Carolina. Cities where people are underwater. But rain can be the bringer of new life. It can also be very destructive. There's two sides of rain. And I wanted to bring, in that spirit, a a Devar Torah that I read actually in a wonderful book by Rabbi Stephen Leader, who is the rabbi of the Wilshire Boulevard Temple in Los Angeles. And he wrote a book called More Beautiful Than Before, which I read recently. It's wonderful exploration of pain and beauty in the world. And almost as a throwaway, Rabbi Leader mentions he's at a conference and someone comes up to him and they're having a talk and about pain. And he says, the Torah says these words should be al levavecha, on your heart, upon your heart. And it's a line many of us are familiar with from the V'ahavta, v'hayu hadavrim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha. Right? These words which I command you today should be upon your heart. And the rabbi asked Rabbi Leader, why does it say al levavecha and not bil levavecha? Right? That it should be in your heart, which would be a more normal way to say that. Al levavecha, upon your heart. And the rabbi goes to answer his own question and says, it's because the words of Torah, we can hear them and we can try and bring them in, but ultimately we only have the power to bring them to rest upon our heart. But the heart is closed off. The heart is blocked off, right? Our heart is sealed. We're very good at sealing our hearts, keeping words of Torah, keeping our feelings, our emotions to ourselves. We build a wall around our heart. It's a classical Musar idea. So how do we get the words from al levavecha into our hearts, bil levavecha? Rabbi Leader explains that one way to do this is through pain, that pain actually cracks our hearts, but those cracks, which we see as something awful, actually allows the words of Torah in. And I can't help but get this image of the Torah as water out of my head. It doesn't take a big crack to let the learning in, right? But if pain's the only way to bring in the words of Torah, that would be terrible, right? I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. No one should have to go through a painful ordeal, as Rabbi Leader did. It explains in his book, and as I see so many people go through, yes, that's a way that life throws at us, that sometimes the world reprioritizes and makes more sense. The cracks open in our heart and water comes in. But Torah comes in. Is there another way, though, that we can have that access, have that way to open up the cracks in our heart? And there is, and Rabbi Leader mentions it some, and I want to mention it more, and that's through kindness. As a matter of fact, kindness can be even more powerful than pain in breaking down the wall around our heart. Speaking of natural disasters, years ago when Hurricane Katrina hit, I was a rabbi in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I had a congregant whose name is Lynn Paul. She's actually a past president of the synagogue, an amazing, amazing person. Small, diminutive woman. But she decided she wanted to help with Katrina, so she signed up with the Red Cross. She went to do relief work, and she's been doing it ever since. I spoke to her after Harvey in Houston. She drives one of these giant trucks where they go around feeding people. This little Jewish woman in this gigantic RV meal, literally, restaurant on wheels, basically, to hand out these meals to people. I spoke to her after Harvey devastated Houston a couple of years ago. And she said the most interesting thing to me. She said, people are tough, and we show up and they're cleaning out their houses, they're moldy, and all their possessions piled up on their lawns. It's terrible. And it's only when we come and we give them a hug and give them meals, suddenly they break down and they start to cry. And she said, why do you cry when we show up? You'd think you were crying before. And the people said, we do what we have to do in the face of the disaster. We can put up our wall and keep going. Humans are really good at that. People are really good at putting up our walls and keeping them going no matter what's happening to them. They said, but just a little bit of kindness smashes those walls down. And so too with this wall around our heart. So too with connecting to God through Torah, with letting that water in. Pain may open small cracks, and the Torah, the connection with God will seep in. But we can do better through kindness. Kindness can crack that wall wide open by doing kind acts, by reaching out to people. We not only break down their walls, we break down our own wall around our heart, and the word and that connection with God that comes with it is able to infiltrate. And I think maybe that's what Moses is talking about in Haazinu. And so I want to recommend, in the face of the disaster that was Hurricane Florence that hit North Carolina and South Carolina to such devastating effect, do something kind. Make a donation. Send food. There's a conservative synagogue in Wilmington, North Carolina. I still don't know what the status is. They had to evacuate. Wilmington took a direct hit from the storm. It was devastated. Call the synagogue. See if they need something. Send a note. Tell them you're thinking about them. Send a donation. There's so much need right now. And remember, don't do it for them. Yes, do it for them. It's a mitzvah to support people in times of crisis. The United Synagogue, our umbrella organization of the conservative movement, has a fund, an emergency fund you can donate to who will be helping these synagogues who were in the line of this devastating hurricane. But ultimately, we're not doing it to help them only. We're doing it to take that wall down around our own hearts. The rabbis make this comparison between water and rain and renewal and resurrection. But we know that there's two sides to water. There could be two sides to Torah, right? It can be used to uplift and to do good, and it can be used to cut down and judge and manipulated for the purposes of wicked people. And so too with water. It can bring life and renewal when it comes in just the right quantities, but it can be devastating if it comes too little, and even more devastating if it comes too much. But maybe in this case, it's up to us to decide which it is. It'll be devastating no matter what. But maybe a little bit of kindness, maybe a lot of kindness, can help us change the deluge that happened, the pain that life sometimes inevitably brings, that makes those little cracks, open up and allows room for God and for Torah. Maybe it's up to us, through kindness, to knock those rifts wide open and to help support people, and in so doing, that Torah can really become part of us, become in our hearts instead of just upon it. I hope we all experience that kind of renewal for this Sukkot holiday. We go out and we dwell in huts with cracks in the roofs so that the water can come through. Can we all have that kind of water, the water of kindness, the water of hope, the water that allows Torah into our hearts? May that be our blessing for this holiday of Sukkot. I wish you all again, Moedim L'Simcha, Chag Sameach, a very happy Sukkot and a very healthy and joyful year ahead.